What has been acquired during a marriage gets divided during a divorce, and the goal is to make that as easy as possible. Divorce is no one's favorite topic, except maybe a divorce attorney. And while the divorce rate is actually declining throughout the United States, with Texas being one of the states with one of the lowest rates, it still happens. I've been through a divorce, I've worked with lots of clients who have been through divorces, and I know that it's a really trying time, especially when it comes to dividing up the property. Today I'm going to talk with certified professional organizer Amy Payne about the logistics of dividing up property and then moving in the midst of a divorce. But first, let me say this. Neither of us are attorneys, and you always need to consult with your attorney and follow your divorce decree when it comes to dividing assets. Hi, Amy. Thanks so much for talking with me today.
Hi.
I know that as a professional organizer, you've dealt with all kinds of situations, and I'm looking forward to hearing your tips and tricks about packing and moving when divorce is the reason. So typically in a divorce situation, one or both parties end up moving out of the house, and that involves a lot of decisions about what goes with who. So much of that has to be laid out in the actual divorce decree. But once that's done, do you have tips for the actual packing process when things are ultimately going to two different places?
Well, whether it's a divorce or not, we pack like that a lot. So that's a pretty common situation where someone's downsizing, moving to two different locations. So same thing with divorce. You've got a lot of stuff to go through and a lot of emotions involved in the process. And it is tricky because you're dealing with spouses that may or may not get along very well at this point. So it kind of depends on who is in the home at the time and who's kind of visiting to get their items, how that's all going to play out and how nicely it's going to work out.
Right.
But definitely I would recommend, we like to use a color-coded system when we move people, and I could see a scenario in this where you would have color coding where all of the, and let's just use pink and blue for boy and girl, but you can have, all the blue boxes are going with the husband, all of the pink boxes are going with the wife, a way that you can designate things even within a certain room. If things got packed in the kitchen and some of it belongs to one person, some of it belongs to the other person. At that point, I would recommend a color-coded system. I think that
really
would
smart.
Make it easier.
Way easier. Yeah, really smart. And so what about sentimental items or marital keepsakes? Keep those, get rid of them?
I have seen a lot of clients that have kept their marital keepsakes, and I think it kind of depends on if you have children or not. Think about, when you're a teenager or young person, you dated somebody, you've got pictures of you and them. Are you going to keep those forever? Maybe, maybe not. I don't think it's a bad idea to hold on to it for a little while until the emotion of the divorce has died down. And then you can make a more logical decision about, is this something that I actually want to hold on to or not? When there's children involved, I do feel like holding on to some of those keepsakes is a good idea, because even though you personally may be totally over it and not interested in reliving it, the children, that could be a very interesting part of their history of their family. And so I do think that there is a time and a place to keep some of that. Although if you don't have children and you are not a sentimental person and you really don't want to relive it, I would say let it go. There are times where holding on to things that bring back bad memories is not healthy emotionally either. So if you're keeping it, I would say pack it away somewhere where you're not having to just bump into it on occasion. I had a client, it was more of like a legal issue, but they had a scenario that had happened in their past that was extremely devastating to them and difficult. And it was necessary for them to keep items from that scenario, but they packed it in a box. We labeled it bad box and put it in the garage on a high shelf where they did not have to bump into it on a regular basis. But should they need to review it or get back to it, they could. So that's kind of how I would handle this situation. And it really just depends on, was it an amicable divorce where that you're friends and you're like, hey, I don't mind seeing a picture of
Right.
this friend of mine that's no longer my spouse? Or is it a really mean, nasty situation where every time you look at it, it's going to make you sad or angry? It's possible it could make you angry. So protect yourself from those kinds of emotional situations by packing it away.
I think that's a great tip. As you know, I've gone through a divorce, and that was one of the big factors. I do have 5 kids. And so while I don't want to see or look at certain things, I felt like it was part of their history, and that they someday, maybe not now, maybe in 10 years, are going to want to see certain things, wedding albums, that kind of thing. And so I did what you recommended and just packed it away in the attic. So it's out of sight, out of mind. But if someone has curiosity down the road, it's accessible.
There you go. That's exactly what I would recommend. So
preserving family history.
Right.
So what about documents? Documents are always a big one in any move, but what's the best way to handle documents that both parties might ultimately need for tax purposes or whatever?
I mean, I am all about going digital, no matter what, whether you're needing to split documents or not. But I'll tell you, it's a lot easier to share a digital document than it is a physical one. So I would suggest if you have a large volume of documents, you may want to invest in a smaller paper scanner. You can get them for $300 to $500 probably. That's a super high speed scanner. Or sometimes you can find a document scanning service that can do that for you. But that's what I would recommend, is get them scanned in. And a lot of times in a divorce too, with the finances, you run into, well, who pays for what? So if you can pay for something like that out of the joint funds before things get separated, that's the best way to do it. And honestly, with photos as well, because if you have like family scrapbooks or pictures of the kids growing up and both people want those, instead of splitting those collections, pay to have them scanned in, and then everyone gets a digital copy. And that's the best way to handle that sort of thing, so that you're
really
not
smart
dividing. And even like in a situation where someone passes away, if you scan it in, multiple people get copies of it instead of dividing it out. And then you're like, well, where's my 3rd grade picture? Well, your dad has that. No.
Right.
That's not a good scenario.
Right. Or you could even, I mean, if you're scanning it in anyway, what a great way to give that to grandparents as well. So there's a lot of uses for that once you've actually done the work.
Exactly.
These days,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, these days we also, you know, if you have an iPhone, or there's different apps available for scanning items. I know the scanning ability on the iPhone is amazing. I scan real estate documents like that all the time. So if you're just doing minimal items that you think both parties might need, that's an easy way to do it as well.
Absolutely. If it is just a few items, that's super easy to scan in with your phone. Absolutely. Yeah. If it's large volume, pay to have it done, or buy a fairly cheap scanner to just do it quickly, instead of a page by page. That would take forever if you're talking about lots of real estate investments or things like that that you both need the documents for.
Right. And again, you have to follow what your lawyers have stated in the decree. So I can't state enough that you've got to be super careful. But this is probably a great area to pull a professional organizer in as well, especially if it isn't a super amicable situation and you're dividing assets. Even just getting the advice of how to handle that in the heart of emotion is a great idea.
Right. And having that neutral third party there, even as things are being packed, to where it's going to simmer down the emotions just simply because there's a third party audience there. And so hopefully that can help just calm everyone down, and let's look at it logically and not emotionally, and let's just get it done, get out, move on with your life, and not just wallow in the stress of that particular situation. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much. Those are great tips. And if you want to talk to Amy about really anything related to professional organizing, Amy owns Lasting Order. You can find all of the information in the description below, and just reach out if you have questions or comments. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks, Amy.
Thanks.